Morning, everyone. Cliff Dubenois here, and this is the path to 1 million, chronicling the stories of my journey to impact 1 million people. This is episode 46. The other day, I was reading an article that was written by Gary Vaynerchuk when he talked about this sense of building an online community, and it started getting me thinking about what is it that's appealing about a community? Because I know that this pops up all the time when we're talking about using social media to either build a business or to to support a nonprofit. Everybody's always talking about you need to build a community, you need to build a community, an online community. And it got me thinking about, I think it was the first time that I personally ever felt like I was part of a community. It was my senior year of high school. And the college that I picked to go to was actually located in Daytona Beach, Florida. And my parents wanted to see it. So during spring break, we piled in the car and we drove from Michigan down to Florida to Daytona Beach. And so we went to this university, and the entire university was focused on aviation and aerospace. At the time, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer so bad. And, for the most part, going through high school and everything else, and I would tell people, yeah, I'm thinking about being an aerospace engineer. I would get this flat look like, oh, he's into space, he's a geek, he's a Star Trek kid, whatever it is. And I just accepted it, as whatever. And I just, I basically felt like I was flying solo on that account. But I remember that during the tour of the campus when we were in Florida, and I was very excited about what I was seeing. They were showing the engineering building, and they had this giant wind tunnel there. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I was actually seeing stuff in real life that I had only seen in photos before. But we were walking through, and the gentleman who took us on the tour, he brought us into the cafeteria, and there was this whole sea of students in there, and they were all having lunch, and they were all chit-chatting with each other and stuff. And he was pointing out, he said, yeah, this is the cafeteria here, and this is where you get the food, and this is where we have all of our big student meetings and things like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I remembered that one student stood up and ran outside. And he was followed by another student, and then another student, and all of a sudden everybody got up and ran outside. And I remember I was looking around like what's going on? And I looked at the gentleman giving the tour, and I said, why did everybody run outside? He goes, oh, that's because the space shuttle just lifted off from Cape Canaveral. And I was frozen for a second. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah. He goes, Cape Canaveral's not that far away. You can actually see the space shuttle going up. And I immediately ran outside. I followed all those students. I ran outside, and there was hundreds of us that were in the quad area, and you could actually see the space shuttle contrail going up. And I couldn't see the actual shuttle itself, but I could see the contrail going up. And at that point in time, the only time that I ever saw the space shuttle was on TV. I never got to see it in real life. I had been to Huntsville, Alabama to see the museum there for the Apollo program and stuff, but I never saw the space shuttle until that day. And I remember standing in the quad, like I said, with all these hundreds of students watching this thing go up, and everybody was screaming, everybody was cheering, they were clapping, and I just was like, wow. And that was the first time ever that I felt a part of a community, and that to me sealed it. After that, I was like, I am going to this school. There's no other else. I'm not going. I had applied to, I think, Western Michigan as well. They had an aerospace program there, and I applied to this other college, Delta. But man, it was cemented in my brain. If I had to be homeless to go to the school, I was going to go because of that sense of community when I was there. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, it was an awesome experience. And of course, I went to the university after that, and of course, I got to see a lot more space shuttles. I actually got a chance to drive down to Cape Canaveral. There was a whole crew of us that went, but there was just something about being surrounded by people who believe like you believe, right? And it's not, I wasn't into the space program just because, I thought that I was smart or I loved math or anything else like that. I actually struggle when it comes to math. But it was just a part of the shared belief that when I got to the university, all of us felt like the future of humanity lie in space. And of course, that thinking there, I mean, today, when you take a look at SpaceX, or you take a look at Dragon, or any number, there's so many billionaires out there that are starting their own space exploration companies out there because they all believe in that as well. I mean, you just read Elon Musk, any one of his interviews, his obsession is to get a colony on Mars. That's like his whole, that's his whole dream. But anyways, there's this, this sense of community has actually grown. And now it's like this stuff of, science fiction is becoming science. It's becoming fact. It's becoming part of reality. So, when I take a look at this from like a business perspective, for instance, this is one of the key reasons why when it comes to buying a computer, or if I get a new phone or something along those lines, I'm always Apple. When Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak created Apple, like way back in the day, one of the things that they really focused on was building a community. And they were coming up with the Worldwide Developers Conference. And they would all the time talking and having these large events where they would get people together to show them their new products that were coming out. And to them, it was all about building that sense of community. And of course, Apple in the mid-90s was really struggling. Steve Jobs was basically fired from the company. They couldn't get the right CEO in there. Apple was floundering. But the only reason why really Apple was surviving was because when they would come out with new products, that community was so strong that believed in Apple that they would buy all of these products that Apple was coming out with. And of course, when Steve Jobs came back, it was like a rock star moment. It was like, holy cow, the Messiah of Apple has returned. And so from there, that's why Apple has gone on to become the world's most wealthiest company. And if you ever want to experience the Apple brand, it's not just about throwing money at them, but all you have to do is if you have a problem and you go to Apple, they genuinely are dedicated to fix it. And there's been a number of times where I've gone to the Apple store where they could have taken advantage of me because, I don't know, but I go to the Apple store and they're like, hey, Cliff, this is the problem here and we'll fix it. They don't charge me for it. I know I shared this story before about my parents' Mac Mini that was like 8 years old. It clearly wasn't covered under warranty anymore. I took it to the Apple store, and when I took it to the Apple store, dropped it off, and I talked to him like a couple days later, the guy on the phone said, yeah, the wireless card doesn't work anymore, and it's preventing the Mac Mini from booting up. So if you don't need the wireless card, I'll just take it out. And I didn't need the wireless card because I plugged my parents directly into the internet. So I was like, yeah, go ahead and remove it. How much do I owe you? Thinking this would be like $500 or $600. And he goes, oh, no charge. He goes, I didn't actually do any work. All I did was just remove the network card. Keep in mind, this was like 8 years old, and he didn't charge me a penny for it. And it was like awesome because then my parents got their Mac Mini back. They could get back on the internet. My dad could start cruising NASCAR.com. It was just like, it was a complete awesome experience. And because Apple was investing in that relationship, that's what keeps me coming back to them. I don't even look at Dell. I don't look at HP. I don't look at any other PC brands. Whenever I think about buying a new computer, buying a new laptop, buying a new phone, Apple.com is the first place that I go because that's a sense of community that I have. I always watch the live events when they come out because I love to see the new technology, everything else like that. And I'm not alone. There's millions of other people out there that do this as well. And this is one of the core ideas that I focused on when I built out my LinkedIn process, because my whole thing is a marketing group that I belong to, and I'll talk about that more in a future episode. We always talk about how the fact that amateurs focus on sales, professionals focus on relationships. So when I built my LinkedIn course, Lead System Hacks, it was all about how can I build relationships at scale using social media, coming from a place of contribution. Because we all know this. If we're in the sales world, we all know this. It's a lot easier to sell somebody when you've built a relationship with them versus going in cold, right? And the stats all show this, and people, they always say this. And when I got into sales, this was something that was drilled in my head. If people know you, like you, and trust you, then they will do business with you, right? Know you, like you, trust you. If you haven't established those three things, you're not going to do business with them, period. So my whole thing was, how can I go about creating a system where you can start building relationships at scale so people first off know you, right? And then what can you do from a place of contribution to get them to like you? What can you do to help them out? An example of this, I talked about this in episode 42, coming from a place of contribution, right? Are you sending them an article that is self-serving, or are you sending them something that can help them out? So if you want to learn more about that, go back and watch episode 42. But keep in mind, when the process starts to break down is when people try to cut out the relationship building part. They just want to skip the foreplay and go right for the cookies, right? They want to skip the know you, like you, trust you, tried and true formula. They want to skip that and just move right in for the ask. And that is where the process actually breaks down. This is not Tinder. This is not Bumble. This is not swipe right. Is it swipe left? I don't know. I've never used those apps, but I know what they're for anyways, if you know what Tinder and Bumble is. But this is not Tinder. This is not Bumble. This is not the game that we're playing. We are in the relationship space. And this is exactly why, with building this out and putting this content out there and everything else, it's all about finding people who believe like I believe in the fact that building relationships is the key to success. Whether you're building a business, whether you're trying to build a career, whether you're supporting a nonprofit, you have to have those relationships in place, because those are the people that are going to continue to drive your business forward. So a key ingredient, obviously, for building all this community together is finding the people who are passionate about those things that you are passionate about as well. And so for you to build a community, you have to be the leader for it. You have to exhibit those traits. You have to talk about those traits that other people can resonate with. So people look at it and say, you know what, I like the way this guy thinks or this girl thinks, right? It's all about focusing on adding that special ingredient, that bringing forth that passion and saying, hey, this is what I believe in. Do you believe in it as well? And people are either going to say yes or they're going to say no. And you want the people that say yes. And with our interconnected world, it is easier than ever for you to build out those connections. Anyways, that's all I have time for today with this particular episode. Thank you once again for watching. I will be back tomorrow with another exciting episode. I hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and I will see you then.